All right, hello again. This is Christian. So in this video, I'm gonna go over the composition API. We didn't get a chance to do that in the previous videos. So here again, the two diagrams show you the difference between the two. Okay, so the options API is the more common one that's been used in Vue 2. And if you are already very familiar with this, you can stick with that, or you can try to use the new composition API. And again, notice the differences here. Okay. One of the major differences is, of course, the keyword or the directive setup here. It's attached directly to the script tag as opposed to over here. Now, the setup is actually a function you can use inside the script here as well for the option API, but I'm not going to go over that, okay? The difference is that your data, like all these data here, are exposed in the root level here, or I guess in the global space here, as opposed to over here, your data are stored inside the return function of the data function here, or I mean the return statement in here, okay? So any variable you put inside the return statement here are reactive. If you want to create a non-reactive variable, you would do something like the following. You would create that using a variable inside the created or the before mount hook, and those will be non-reactive, okay? But over here on the other side, in the composition API, all your variables and functions are all exposed here. So notice how functions are created inside the methods over here. Here, you don't have to do that. You just create a regular function like you normally would on regular JavaScript. And they're all exposed here as well. And then, to make your variables reactive, you have to use one of the other directives called the ref for reference, or the reactive function to make it reactive. And I'll show you how those work, because the way you access data is a little bit tricky when you use the reference as opposed to reactive. Okay, so let's go and try, and we can fix this little cat example to make it reactive also using the composition API. Back to the ID here. Now, this is the example that we did before, and I'm going to go ahead and delete these right here because it's just a little bit messy. Now we're using the options API. Options API, you use a script tag, and then you must use the export default directive to export the object here out to the view to use it, okay? And all your data are stored inside the data function and so forth. So I'm going to refactor this, and instead of changing this to a composition API, I'm going to create a new component. So at the same time, you can kind of see how, child components are created and also used. So I'm going to move the cat into a child component called cats, right? And then we're going to change the template. So instead of putting the image right here, we're going to replace this image tag with the cats tag, okay? So first thing is, I'm going to go into the components here and create a new component. So make sure you select a folder and click here to add a component called cats.view. Okay, so here, three things. The first is the script tag. And again, use the setup. If you don't do that, it's going to be considered as a options API. And then we have the template here. And then down here, we have the style. The style also, you want to set the scope unless you want your style sheet to be global. But if you want to silo this end only to this template, then you must use scope. And it's really actually recommended to use the scope here. So let's do this easy part first. I want only the style to, change the size of our cat images in here. So over here, I'm going to go to the style part right here and move this, cut this out, and only apply that to the cat's component. All right. So this part is done. I'm going to hide it. I don't need that anymore for now. And I'll just put some spaces to have more room in here. Now in the template over here, I'm going to move from the app view I mentioned earlier, this image tag, right? This part, I'm going to move that to the cat's template. So it will live inside this template now. It belongs to the cat. And so over here in its place, I'm going to add a cat's tag later. The hello message here is going to belong to the app view, which is the parent component. And not only that, I'm going to move these as well. So the cats, happy cats and grumpy cats variables, I'm going to move that over to the cats variable. Anything that are is dependent on this cat. Okay, so that's moved, and also these functions right here, these two functions, the reset and the update, is not going to be used here anymore because they'll be managed by the cats component. So go in here and add it into the script, and we'll fix it in a minute, okay? Because the way it's set up is different from the other one. And then this cats variable is no longer needed at this level. So all I'm having is just a very simple, you know, template. Let me close this style sheet here so it's not too messy here. And I move that inside here somewhere in my script tag. And let me clean up a little bit here so it looks a little bit nicer. I wanted to move that over, but I guess that's okay. All right, so, and in here is okay. I need to import the cat, right? So once I create this, I'm going to import it in here so I can use it. So up here in the top, I'm going to import the cat component from the components. This type from the components and then cats. Okay, that is the component I want to use. And then because I'm using options API, I have to register the cats so I can use it in the template. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is go here and create the components directive or property, plural, by the way. It's an object. Usually all these are objects except for the template. It's a string. And then I'm going to register the cats in here, right? It's just a cat. This just means that cat is equal to cat, right? Same thing. So every time you use this, it's redundant. So you don't have to, you know, use the second parameter. If you use the object, if you use the this approach, if let's just say I'm going to use like C for cat, then you can do that. But if it's the same name, you just do some omit the second parameter. Okay, so once I have my cats here, then I can replace this area down here. Remember we had the image tag. I put that cat right in here. And that is my component. All right. So this one is pretty much done at this point. So now I'm going to focus on the cat down here. We need to make some changes in here. Okay. So remember that every function and variables are exposed. So we're not using the export here. So that means I have to change this to regular, like the JavaScript declarations. So my cats, I want to change it to a constant, an array, so that I don't have to write it, right? Change that to equal sign. And then I'll put some colon here. And then the update functions, these are regular functions. You can use the function keyword, or I'll use the arrow function just to show you, because you know you want to get used to the arrow functions. Sometimes you don't want to use it, but in this case, that it should be fine. So reset cat to that. So they're both arrow functions. And also, I would not be using this keyword anymore to access the cat, right? Because this is not inside of a class or an object. And so I'm just access the cats directly like this. I don't need a comma here, actually. Okay, so you can see it looks just like regular JavaScript. And I access down here exactly the same, no changes. The only thing is, because the way I do here, this is no longer reactive. I put here none, not reactive. Okay, it should not be reactive because the way it's set up. So if I say this and launch my page, you're going to see that, yeah, so the images do load, right? So they're no longer reactive. And I guess how you know for sure that it's not loading, it's invoking those two functions. And you can easily check for that, right? So we can just do very quickly, go back in here inside the function, and we can load in here the, I put here the update and then put I'll just copy this and move it down here. And this is the reset I, okay? So save that, go back to the browser. And you notice down here in the console, it's actually showing the correct information. So when I hover update, I leave. So it does show that they do work, right? It's just that the variable or the array is not reactive. Okay, so to make that reactive, we have to do two things. First is we need to change this to a reactive variable using a function called ref. So in here, I'm going to import both of them, ref and reactive. Okay, both of these are included in the Vue library. So I'm going to go here, Okay, so now they import it, and then all you have to do is wrap this value inside of the ref function like this. Okay, so now it's reactive. Now, the way you do this, if you're using the ref function, is that this values is a single value here, is assigned to a property called value. So therefore, when you access the data in the code, you have to go through the value property. So like in here, if I do cats of I, it's not going to work. Okay, I have to go in here and put cats dot value and then of I. Okay, of I, because this is an array. If it's not array, then it'll just be dot value. Okay, same thing down here. I need to say dot value and then of I. Now, that's the only places I will need to change. In the template itself, you can access cats just exactly like you normally did with the other variables, right? So no change in the template here. It's just the source code. You need to access the value. So if I save this and go back to the browser again, and you will see that now it's already working. If I refresh it, hover, right, it's working just like normal before. Okay, so that's one approach. The second approach is to use the reactive function. So I'm gonna, I'll turn this off and I'll create a new variable here. Now, this approach is similar to how React uses its state property. So I will create another variable here. I'll call it state. It's commonly called state. And this state here will manage all the variables that are reactive. So I will assign that with the function called reactive. Okay, and inside the reactive function is an object. And here, if you put your key value pairs. So I want my cats to be the key, and the value assigned to that is the array here. I'm going to copy this, put right in here. And that's my reactive variable. State has a key of cats. So if you look at this, it's just like a regular object, right? Now, the only difference is that using this method to access the cat, you have to go through the state object. So I will have to go in here, like in everywhere else, okay, not just in the source code, but in the template as well. So therefore, I don't have access to the value anymore. It's not assigned to that. So I remove that out. But to access the cat, I have to go through state.cats, right? It's just a variable name. If I have another variable, state dot whatever that variable is. So again, this is how React actually does theirs. So very similar to how React works. So if you recall, Vue is like a combination, or I should say it borrowed a lot of features from React and it borrowed a lot of features from Angular as well, especially at the component registration and things like that. So that is good to go. In the Vue, I have to go and access the cats through the state object like this as also. Anywhere I use cats, except for the class, that's something else. So there we go. I set that, and the rest should still be okay. So let's go back to the browser and check our values, and you will see that it works just like before. All right. So those are the two options for you to use if you want to set your variables to be reactive using the Composition API. Okay, so either the ref or reactive. If you don't want to access states.cat, then of course you can also do this. You can say, I want to create cats. So put a constant cats is equal to state.cats, right? If you do that, because I shortened this to cats, and then if you do that way, maybe you can go back to the original version of the cats because it's now assigned to cats, right? So I don't need that anymore. And go back to the cats, and let's save this. And then let's try again and see what happens. Okay, so you can see that it works just fine. All right, basically we assign it to a new variable, but that's how things work in the Composition API. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.